Jerry, obviously you mentioned the 2 interceptions for Dak Prescott. What did you make of his performance today?
Actually, if you looked at the score and looked at all the stats and looked at everything, the extra turnovers, probably the difference. We're sick.
What did you think?
Sick.
I think the Dallas Cowboys need to start considering alternatives at the quarterback position other than Dak Prescott. Welcome to the channel. If you are new, consider subscribing and dropping a like on the video if you do enjoy it. But once again, the Cowboys season came to a disappointing close against the San Francisco 49ers in a 19-12 defeat. But contrary to what a lot of people are talking about this game, I actually have a different viewpoint on what happened on the field. I think if you compare the talent of both these teams, it's not really an argument that the 49ers have some of the most talent in the league and they would get the advantage over the Cowboys. But while watching this game, you can just not help yourself from believing that the Cowboys were so close to being able to pull off the upset on the road. The defense for the Cowboys played absolutely amazing. They shut down CMC for most of the game. They limit Brock Purdy out of the pocket and his throwing to George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. McCaffrey only had 35 yards on 10 carries. He did get a rushing touchdown, but for the most part, the Cowboys defensive line did a fantastic job limiting him on the ground. Deebo only had 45 receiving yards and Kittle had 95, but he was pretty limited in the red zone. He was not able to get loose for a touchdown. And although Brock Purdy was pretty efficient and did not turn over the ball, he did not take over the game like he did against the Seahawks. So I was really impressed with Dan Quinn's game plan and how well their defense performed. The real issue in this game was the Cowboys' offense, and they were not able to move the ball efficiently, and they had a lot of turnovers which fall on the shoulders of Dak Prescott. I would like to be a little bit objective here and talk about the 49ers' defense, which has shown itself to be the best in the league by a pretty long shot, and all the talent that they have on that side of the ball is really ridiculous. I've already made a video on their roster and how they basically have a Pro Bowl player at every single level of that defense, which is just remarkable. So it's not like the Cowboys were going up against an inferior opponent and laid an egg. The 49ers had an amazing defense, but to win these types of games, your best players have to rise to the occasion and play well, and the Cowboys stars didn't. Ezekiel Elliott only had 10 carries for 26 yards, and we've seen this from Zeke almost every year of his career, just a slight decline every single season. Less yards per game, less production, and less explosiveness, and we saw that again in the divisional round against the 49ers. And the other running back in that backfield, Tony Pollard, who had a great season, I thought he started off the game pretty well, but unfortunately late in the second quarter, he suffered a high ankle sprain and broke his leg on a tackle, and that was a huge blow to the Cowboys' offense, which needed some help on the ground and needed some explosiveness out of their backfield. And the offensive line for Dallas, I thought, did a pretty good job based on who they were going against. Dak Prescott was only sacked one time, and although he did have some pressure on multiple plays, I still do believe that the Cowboys' offensive line was good enough to win the game. But what this game came down to, and what it's been for the last few years for the Cowboys, is the play of Dak Prescott, and if he's able to elevate the team and lead them to a victory. And much like we've seen from Dak Prescott this season, there was some good, but there was also a lot of bad. And unfortunately, the bad outweighed the good in this game, and it was too much for the Cowboys to overcome. They were only able to score 12 points, and that's not going to be enough to win a playoff game, especially on the road. And Dak didn't play a good ball game, and you cannot have that when your team needs you to perform the most. He only completed 23 of 37 passes for 206 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions, which were absolutely backbreaking. First interception, I give Dak a little bit of leeway because it did look like he had some miscommunication with Michael Gallup, but it was still not a good decision, and it was still a very late pass. It seemed like Michael Gallup was running a comeback route, but the corner was never fooled, and he knew what the route was going to be the entire time. And Dak waited until he was completely out of his break to throw the ball, which is never a good thing to do on a comeback route. And the pass was intercepted, and it gave the 49ers great field position and practically in the red zone. But like I was referring to earlier, the Cowboys defense played a hell of a game. They stopped the 49ers in the red zone, making them kick a field goal, and that saved Dak Prescott's first turnover from becoming a huge disaster. It was the second turnover for Dak that really bothered me and basically costed the Cowboys the game in the grand scheme of things. It's coming to the end of the second quarter. The Cowboys are in the red zone. It's 2nd and 2. The game is tied 6-6, and the Cowboys have a chance to take a commanding lead going into halftime, at least going up by a touchdown, which would be huge on the road. I think he thought the 49ers were playing man, and he did not see Charvarius Ward drop down into the zone. The pass basically hit Ward right in the chest. It bounced off of him and went into the arms of Fred Warner, and the pass was intercepted in the red zone, costing the Cowboys Cowboys at least 3 points. And then the 49ers were able to bring the ball all the way down the field to attempt a 50-yard field goal with Robbie Gould, and it was nothing but the net. So at least a 6-point swing, potentially a 10-point swing if they could have scored a touchdown. So a huge turnover for Dak basically changed the complete complexion of the game, and that is why I put this loss solely on Dak Prescott's shoulder, because I think everybody else around him played a good enough game to win. We saw the exact same thing last year in the playoffs, but this time was the wild card round when the 49ers traveled to Jerry's World to play the Cowboys. Prescott in that game went 23 for 43 for 254 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and it was basically the same game that we saw this past weekend. The Cowboys defense played good enough to win, held the 49ers to only 23 points. The Cowboys weren't really able to run the ball a whole lot. Ezekiel Elliott did not get things going. The game was put on Dak Prescott's shoulders, and he was unable to elevate the team to a winning effort against the 49ers. So it's becoming very apparent what happens when the Cowboys need Dak Prescott to win them the game. He simply cannot do it. When Dak had just entered the league out of Mississippi State as a 4th-round pick, the Cowboys had a loaded roster. They had a historically great offensive line with Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, Travis Frederick. They still had Dez Bryant and Jason Witten, and Ezekiel Elliott had the best season of his career as a rookie. But Dak was not asked to do a whole lot. He was basically a game manager, handing the ball off to Zeke, throwing some easy completions to Dez Bryant or Jason Witten and moving the chains. But as those players have gotten older, as the Cowboys roster has gotten worse, they've had to rely on Dak more and more and more, especially after they paid him a large sum of money. And what happens is the offensive line needs to be rebuilt. You lose some of your weapons. Ezekiel Elliott begins to fade a little bit, and you're left with a quarterback that needs to elevate his roster, and Dak just has not been able to do that his entire career. Now, I still think Dak is a good quarterback. I don't think it's going to be easy to replace him, but if you're the Cowboys, you definitely have to start thinking of a plan B or somebody else that can come in and compete with him for the starting quarterback position. He's a very solid quarterback, I would say around the 10 to 12 range, but is that enough to elevate your team? Is it enough to win a Super Bowl? I really don't know the answer to that question. If we're just going off of Dak Prescott's career, I don't think you can. And it's even harder when you have to pay them over $100 million, because then you cannot build a solid roster around them like the 49ers have, because they have rookie quarterbacks. If Dak didn't have to make so much money and he was on a team like the 49ers, definitely he could win a Super Bowl. He is good enough to do that in that type of situation. But with the roster that the Cowboys have and the limited assets they have due to Dak's contract, I don't know if they can build a good enough team around him to elevate him to a Super Bowl. I think Dak at one point is going to have to elevate this team to Super Bowl status, or they're going to have to find another quarterback that can do so. I think the Cowboys just need to do what they did when they had Tony Romo and they drafted Dak in the 4th round. You have a solid quarterback right now in Dak, but you keep drafting some guys in the later parts of the draft and hoping that one of them develop into being a very good quarterback. So that is what I would do if I were the Cowboys. Just keep drafting quarterbacks until you find an upgrade, and if anything, you have a viable backup who maybe you can trade down the road. Dak only has guaranteed money for next season, and then the Cowboys can get off the contract. So who knows, maybe next year is a put up or shut up time for Dak, and if he does not perform well in the playoffs or the biggest moments once again, maybe the Cowboys move off of him. It is crazy to think that right now, but next draft class for quarterbacks is really good. So I think if Dak slips up again next year, the Cowboys will have some interesting decisions to make in 2024. But thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. But let me know what you think of Dak Prescott and if you blame him for this past weekend's loss, and also what you would do if you were the Cowboys. Would you stick with Dak and stay believing in him, or would you start to look around for a future replacement? But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.